Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the news live here at the Philippine Arena. Here are the headlines tonight.
A state government in central Nigeria confirmed that gunmen seized 136 children from an Islamic cemetery at the weekend, the latest in a string of mass kidnappings in the country.
And pirates kidnapped 4 Koreans and 1 Filipino crew member from a tuna fishing vessel close to Benin in the Gulf of Guinea earlier this week.
NASA announced 2 new missions to Venus that will launch at the end of the decade and are aimed at learning how Earth's nearest planetary neighbor became a hellscape while our own thrived.
And images of Iceland's volcano erupting and a partial crater rim collapsing into the lava pond.
First, here in the country, 3 people were reported dead while 1 missing as Tropical Storm Dante struck several parts in the southern and central parts of the country, according to the National Disaster Council. Of the deaths, the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council said 2 were recorded in Davao region, while the other one was reported in the Soc-Sargen region, both in Mindanao. Meanwhile, Pagasa said all tropical cyclone wind signals were lifted as Dante continues to move away from the land mass. It said gale warning is still in effect over the northern and western seaboards of northern Luzon. Sea travel is risky for small sea crafts over the waters.
Now, in other news, a 7-year-old boy who was declared missing at the height of Tropical Storm Dante was found dead late Wednesday in Calubian, Leyte, while his 2-year-old brother has yet to be located, according to police reporting that on Thursday. The 2 children were sleeping when flood water swept their makeshift house in Padoga Village, Calubian Town, midnight of Tuesday. The body of Brando Salino, 7 years old, was seen floating in the sea around 4:45 p.m. on Wednesday. His brother, Ruel, 2 years old, remains missing. The Calubian Police Station said in its report sent to the Philippine National Police Regional Office there. The rest of the Salino family is temporarily taking shelter at the house of a relative, while personnel from the local government Bureau of Fire Protection and the local police are still conducting search and rescue operations to find the other missing child. Although some areas in eastern Visayas were not directly hit by the tropical storm, the heavy rainfall has triggered flooding in several communities.
A state government in central Nigeria confirmed today that gunmen seized 136 children from an Islamic cemetery at the weekend, the latest in a string of mass kidnappings in the country. Take a look.
I appeal to the government, they should try by all possible ways to protect our peoples for us, our children for us. We cannot say anything. They tried with the effort that they made so far, and we are hoping they are going to try harder to bring back our children successfully.
Criminal gangs have targeted schools in remote areas where pupils live in dormitories with little security protection before hauling their victims into nearby forests to negotiate ransoms. Police said the gunmen attacked Tejina town in Niger State on Sunday, arriving on motorbikes and shooting indiscriminately. Niger State Police spokesman Wasiu Abiodun said the criminals killed 1 resident, injured another before kidnapping an unknown number of children children from the Salihu Tanco Islamic School. Now, late on Wednesday, Niger State confirmed 136 students had been taken. President Muhammadu Buhari ordered security forces and intelligence agencies to step up efforts to rescue the children. The attackers did release 11 of the pupils who were too small and couldn't walk very far, according to the authorities. Niger's deputy governor said the government did not pay ransoms, adding that security agencies were being careful in the pursuit of bandits to avoid collateral damage. Armed gangs are terrorizing inhabitants in northwest and central Nigeria by looting villages, stealing cattle, and taking people hostage. More than 700 children and students have already been kidnapped by gunmen for ransom since December.
In other news, pirates kidnapped 4 Koreans and 1 Filipino crew member from a tuna fishing vessel close to Benin in the Gulf of Guinea earlier this week, according to Ghanaian news. The Gulf of Guinea, a key shipping route extending from Senegal to Angola, accounted for the vast majority of maritime crew abductions last year, with pirates targeting commercial vessels. Felix Charles Azare, prime officer for the Marine Police Unit, said the Ghana-registered boat was attacked on Tuesday, although the Ghana Navy recovered the vessel and rescued some crew members. He said Ghana's Navy had been on the alert in the country's territorial waters as pirates intensified attacks. Armed pirates kidnapped 5 other seamen 2 weeks ago, stealing valuables after holding the crew for 6 hours before releasing them. The Gulf of Guinea accounted for more than 95% of global maritime kidnappings last year, 130 out of 135 cases, according to the International Maritime Bureau, which monitors security at sea.
And Sri Lankan authorities said today they are preparing for the worst-case scenario of a possible oil slick from the burnt-out cargo ship sinking off Colombo's main harbor. Officials fear an even greater ecological crisis if the ship's oil leaks into the Indian Ocean. Take a look.
Actually, this damage has caused many issues. It has damaged the whole ecosystem. It has damaged the ocean. It has living beings and fish and corals. All these have been destroyed.
Readied oil dispersants, booms, and skimmers in case of a leak from the MVX Express Pearl, which has nearly 350 tons of oil in its fuel tanks. The vessel, which burned for 13 days within sight of the island's west coast, has already caused the country's worst maritime environmental disaster, littering the beaches with huge volumes of plastic pollution. An Indian Coast Guard vessel already in the area has equipment to deal with an oil slick before it could reach the beaches, according to the Sri Lankan Navy, which has requested additional assistance. The Singaporean operators of the MV Express Pearl said the vessel was continuing to slowly sink after efforts to tow it farther from the coast on Wednesday failed. Authorities believe that the fire on the ship was caused by a nitric acid leak, which the crew apparently knew about from May 11, 9 days before the blaze started.
In other news, Iran has been hit with twin disasters on land and at sea. Take a look.
حریق تا ساعت ظهر امروز ادامه داشت و تا ساعت دیگر پالایشگاه تهران وارد مدار تولید خواهد.
Early yesterday, the country's largest warship sank in the Gulf of Oman after erupting in flames. Footage aired by state television showed a massive column of smoke rising from what it said was the burning vessel. The fire broke out in one of the systems of the ship, a Navy statement said without elaborating. Firefighting efforts continued for 20 hours before the ship went down, and Iran said 33 sailors were hurt. In a separate incident, a huge blaze broke out early Wednesday evening at an oil refinery in southern Tehran. Officials said it was an accident and blamed a leak in a liquefied gas line that triggered an explosion. The refinery is situated in an industrial zone, but also lies a few hundred meters or yards from people's homes. State television said 18 oil reservoirs had caught fire.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Kumanta, sumaya tayong lahat. Saya-saya.
Welcome back. The Philippines is looking for 3,000 individuals who are willing to participate in the studies on using mixed coronavirus vaccine brands as well as COVID-19 booster shots. That, according to a Department of Science and Technology official today, DOST Undersecretary Rowena Cristina Guevara said these individuals must be 18 years old and above, and those who belong in the government's priority A1 to A4 categories in the vaccine rollout. Take a look.
Magkakaroon po tayo ng enrollment ng 3,000 participants ages 18 and above. Ngayon po, meron po tayong 12 eksperimento na gagawin na tag 250 bawat isa. Yung pong tinatawag na same vaccine platforms, ito po yung A4 priority group ang ating paggagawan, na ang kombinasyon po nung una ay Sinovac at yung pangalawa po ay AstraZeneca at AstraZeneca. Yan po yung ating magiging baseline. Yung comparator po natin dyan ay po 5 combination na mga A4 priority group. Ito po yung pagkauna mo ay Sinovac, ang pangalawa mo ay AstraZeneca, tapos yung pangalawa naman, Sinovac ulit, tapos Sputnik V yung pangalawa mo, tapos yung third ay Sinovac, tapos Sputnik V na Adeno 5. Dalawang klase po kasi yung Sputnik, ano po. Tapos yung pang-apat po ay Sinovac followed by Pfizer. At yung pang-5 po ay Sinovac followed by Moderna. Yung 5 pong huling experiment, ang tawag ng iba ay booster. Dito naman po, gagawin po natin na Sinovac at Sinovac yung first at second dose mo. Tapos magkakaroon ka ng third dose na either AstraZeneca, Sputnik V Adeno 5, Sputnik V Adeno 26, Pfizer at saka Moderna. Tapos malalaman po natin, base dito sa mix and match, kung saan po yung tumataas yung immune response ng ating mga kababayan. Dalawang bagay po yung ating masasabing kahalagahan nitong paggagawa nitong mixing and matching ng vaccines. Yung una po, gusto nating malaman kung pwede ba talagang gawin yung mixing and matching. Ibig sabihin, yung po bang efficacy ng ating vaccines, mag-i-improve ba pag nag-mix and match ka o pareho lang? Tapos pangalawa, gusto nating tiyakin ang kaligtasan ng paggawa ng ganitong klaseng mixing and matching. Kasi po, sa ibang bansa, tinatry din po nila. Kaso, gusto nating malaman kung sa Filipino ethnicity ay epektibo pa itong ginagawang mixing and matching.
The official also said while this kind of study is already being done abroad, they want to see its efficiency on Filipinos. Meanwhile, Dr. Guevara said 5 brands, Sinovac, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna, and Sputnik V will be involved in these clinical trials. Local officials are targeting to start the study by July.
Staying here in the Philippines, President Duterte has renewed his call for universal access to safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines, stressing that vaccine imbalance will have consequences. President Duterte made this pitch during the Gavi COVAX Advanced Market Commitment, or AMC Summit, co-hosted by Japan Prime Minister Suga Yoshihide and Gavi Chair of the Board, Jose Manuel Barroso, on Wednesday. Take a look.
The COVID-19 pandemic will only end once everyone has access to safe and effective vaccine. But to this day, access has not been universal. More than 82% of the vaccines have gone to the rich countries, while only less than 1% have gone to the low-income countries. This imbalance must be corrected, or there will be no real and inclusive global recovery to speak of. As both donor and recipient country, the Philippines counts on the COVAX AMC initiative to bring much-needed vaccines to developing countries. It is our moral responsibility to help each other and face this crisis with greater solidarity and urgency. Today, I am pleased to announce that as COVAX partner, the Philippines commits an additional of $1 million. While our modest contribution demonstrates our firm commitment to this global fight against COVID-19, it is our hope that many more countries will contribute. After this will be our collective investment for the world's people.
The summit was held with the aim to fill the 1.8 billion gap of the COVAX AMC to provide COVID-19 vaccine doses for lower-income economies. Securing 1.8 billion doses would enable the AMC to protect nearly 30% of the population in all AMC countries, or roughly half the entire adult population.
And the Tokyo Olympics are 100% certain to go ahead, that according to the chief organizer, but warned that a major coronavirus outbreak mid-games could slam the door shut on fans. Dennis Liu reports.
Good evening, Alma and CJ. Olympics chief says cancellation unlikely as 10,000 volunteers quit. The Tokyo Olympics chief said the games would only be canceled in extreme circumstances on Thursday, as organizers revealed 10,000 volunteers had quit over coronavirus fears. The 2020 Games, due to open a year late on July 23rd, remain beset by doubts and low public support as Japan battles a fourth virus wave with much of the country, including Tokyo, under a state of emergency. Late on Wednesday, Tokyo 2020 CEO Toshiro Muto said around 10,000 of the 80,000 volunteers vital to the smooth running of the Games had quit, largely over coronavirus concerns. However, Muto said the reduction in volunteers would not affect the Games because the event has been scaled back, so fewer people are needed. As the coronavirus continues to overshadow the Olympic build-up, organizers will unveil details of the medal ceremonies later on Thursday. The latest attempt to generate positive momentum. Polls show 80% of Japanese oppose hosting the Games this year. But surveys among the population of Tokyo have found a more even split between those in favor and against. Tokyo 2020 President Seiko Hashimoto said she believed the tide of public opinion could be turning as Japan's initially slow vaccine campaign begins to speed up. Australia's softball team this week became the first Olympic athletes to arrive in Japan, a major step forward. But in a sign sign of the challenges ahead. The Japan Football Association said a member of Ghana's under-24 Olympic football team tested positive upon arriving in Japan for a friendly late on Wednesday. All of Ghana's team, who will play Japan's U24s on Saturday, tested negative in the 72 hours before their departure. This is the latest for now. Reporting from Tokyo, Japan, this is Dennis Liu. We live in interesting times.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Eagle News will be back with more updates. Please just hold it.
Corporations around the world have been committed to fulfilling their social responsibility, whether it's protecting the environment or working to fight poverty on a local, national, or global level. Ngunit dumating ang pandemic. COVID-19 changed life as we know it, upending businesses and terminating people's livelihoods. Ngunit nakita natin na maraming tumulong na mga korporasyon upang makabangon ang mga maliliit na negosyo sa gitna ng pandemya. Maging ang mga MSMEs din mismo o maliliit na negosyo ay may naiambag na ayuda sa kani-kanilang mga komunidad. Kaya't pag-uusapan natin ang Corporate Social Responsibility o ang tinatawag na CSR. Ano nga ba ito? At uso pa ba ito ngayon na halos lahat ay nangangailangan, maliit man o malaking negosyo? Tatalakayin ito ni Randy Bernardino, ang ating OFB correspondent mula sa Las Vegas, with our guests Maribeth Marasigan, Board Chairperson of the League of Corporate Foundations, and its Board Secretary Reginald Andal. All these in this episode of Open for Business.
The labor market crisis created by the COVID-19 pandemic is far from over, and employment growth will be insufficient to make up for the losses suffered until at least 2023. That according to a new assessment by the International Labor Organization, for the ILO. The organization's World Employment and Social Outlook Trend 2021, or WESO Trends, projects the global crisis-induced job gap will reach 75 million in 2021 before falling to 23 million in 2022.
Well, I think what our report does is to set out in really quite detailed terms what COVID-19 has done to people's working lives in the course of 2020, and it's been a dramatic story, we know that. And then, and I think this is perhaps more important at the current moment, look forward for the next couple of years, 2021, 2022, saying, well, at a time when we're thinking about recovery, well, what really does this recovery look like, and what does it mean for jobs and livelihoods? And I think we've done it in quite detailed and convincing way, there's a lot to worry about, because the first thing to say is, even on a optimistic scenario, the build back over the next year and a half until the end of 2022 is simply not, on current trends, going to restore the damage done by the pandemic. We'll still fall short by a large number of jobs, 23 million jobs in all likelihood. The second thing to worry about, and it's perhaps even more important, is the unevenness of the impact that the pandemic has had. It's hit the most disadvantaged, the most vulnerable, in countries and between countries. So what we're seeing is that the bounce back in labour markets, already apparent in some parts of the world, that's going to be stronger and better in the high-income countries. Why? Because they've got better access to vaccines and therefore are able to open up more quickly, but also because they've got more resources. They're richer countries. So the fiscal space, as we say, to support people and to support enterprises, to stimulate the economy, is that much greater. Whilst for the low-income countries, of course, they're disadvantaged in this regard. So contrary to what we saw, for example, back on the financial crisis, this is a recovery process that runs the risk unless we take the right action, of making existing inequalities in the world of work, and they're very, very big inequalities, even worse. And we have to have a different way, a different trajectory of recovery, what we call a human-centered recovery, so that we don't see this increase in inequality. We need something which leaves nobody behind and provides greater equity of advantage in the world of work.
Philippine Ambassador in Tokyo, Jose Laurel V, said the ongoing COVID pandemic continues to halt the deployment of Filipino workers to Japan. Ambassador Laurel noted that Japan is quite meticulous in its vaccination rollout as well and is currently prioritizing all health frontliners and caregivers. Take a look.
Well, sa ngayon, hindi ho pwedeng magkaroon ng pagbabiyahe o travel dito sa Japan galing sa Pilipinas. It's been cancelled. The only ones that are being exempted are the people in the diplomatic service, and government service is essential. Maski yung iba ay hindi pumunta rito, and vice versa, unless there is a special grant for exemption. And as of now, they still would like to have Filipinos as caregivers and home makers for their aging population. Meron ho kwan. Pero dahil ito nga ang pandemyang talagang napependeho tayo, hindi pinapayagan. Kasama ho, bakit mabagal? Masinsin sila. They are very, very meticulous. And, the Japanese hindi ho nagbabago ang kanilang ang tawag din patakaran. Basta-basta. They really study their system. Their system is very basic. Bigyan lahat muna ang mga frontliners, mga medical people, mga caregivers, lahat. Susunod ang mga matatanda. Pagkatapos, anyone below 70, susunod. Ang pinakahuli ang mga talubata, the younger ones. That is the real reason.
Ambassador Laurel assured that all Filipino workers will be covered by the government's free inoculation program. The ambassador said the COVID-19 state of emergency had been placed in Tokyo, Osaka, Hokkaido, Aichi, Kyoto, Hyogo, Okayama, Hiroshima, Fukuoka, and Okinawa as the country continues to record 4-digit daily additional cases. Meanwhile, he reported that the number of Filipinos infected by the coronavirus is relatively low, most of whom have already recuperated. He said one Filipino, however, died in Tokyo, where a total of 56 cases were logged in Osaka. 2 of the 82 Filipino cases are currently undergoing treatment, while the rest have recovered. In Nagoya, meanwhile, the envoy said no casualty was reported, and beyond that, everybody is fine.
Now here in the Philippines, where the country's power capacity has increased by 30% since the start of the Duterte administration. In a palace briefing on Thursday, the Department of Energy Secretary Alfonso Cuti said the agency continues to work on capacity building and has plans until 2040 to ensure that the country will have a sufficient supply of electricity. On Wednesday, PDP Laban acting president and Senator Emmanuel Manny Pacquiao appealed to Cusi to prioritize solving power problems in the country over politics.
Dito po sa power outage, sino po ang nagkulang, Mr. President?
Mr. President, like I said, na ang nagkulang talaga dito yung sekretary. Ang secretary talaga, Secretary Jose, dahil ikaw ang namuno, ikaw ang secretary ng department ng energy. So, kung ano mang mga problemang ganito, ikaw talaga ang may problema kasi you can exercise your power to solve the problem. Ikaw ang may command responsibility for this problem lahat. Kahit nakasama kita sa partido, ang atin dito nadadamay kaming lahat dito sa partido pag ganyan ang resulta ng trabaho mo. Ang akin dito, Mr. President, is gusto ko lang na kahit kasama kita sa partido, ang intention natin is para sa taong bayan. Hindi ito parang sarili natin, kundi para sa taong bayan.
We have built up capacity by more than 30% since we assume our jobs, and we have planned our indicative power plant build up up to 2040 to make sure that we have sufficient power, supply of power, electricity in the coming years. Lahat yan, lahat ng aspeto po ng pagpaplano, nagawa na po yan. And it is already online yung mga ginagawa pong mga planta. And then nagkaroon po ng aberya, those power plants broke down na nagkataon naman po na na-tiyempo na we have a meeting in Cebu. But it doesn't mean na napapabayanan po because I have I'm not the only guy that is running DOE. And I trust my team. I trust the DOE people addressing the situation. And saka the policies have been laid out already. This is a question of enforcement na lang po, So wala pong relasyon yung pag-meeting sa Cebu. That is another function, and I can do jobs with all the technology that we have today. We can perform more.
U.S. President Joe Biden said today he is looking at the possible retaliation after the White House linked Russia to a cyber attack against global meat processing giant JBS. Asked by a reporter if the president will take action against Russian President Vladimir Putin, whom he will meet for a summit in Geneva later this month, this is what President Biden said.
Mr. President, will you retaliate against Russia for this latest ransomware attack?
We're looking closely at that issue.
Do you think Putin is testing you?
No.
Mr. President,
Now, the ransomware attack on a U.S. subsidiary of Brazilian-owned JBS has again prompted accusations that Russia is at least harboring cyber criminals. Similar suspicions were raised after ransomware hackers forced the temporary shutdown of the huge Colonial fuel pipeline in the eastern U.S. last month. As we heard there, asked if the President Putin is testing him ahead of their summit, the president said no. The Federal Bureau of Investigation on Wednesday attributed the attack to Revil and Sodinokibi, which experts have said are two names for the same hacking group with ties to Russia, and said it was working diligently to bring the threat actors to justice.
In a related news, the White House says President Biden will bring up the U.S. concerns during the summit on June 16, as well as at earlier summits with allies in the G7 group, the European Union, and NATO. The White House has not blamed the Kremlin directly, only suggesting that criminal groups are operating from inside Russia. However, White House spokesperson Jen Psaki said responsible states do not harbor cyber criminals. Take a look.
The President Biden certainly thinks that President Putin and the Russian government has a role to play in stopping and preventing these attacks. Hence, it will be a topic of discussion when they meet in 2 weeks.
For its part, Russia said Wednesday it would be open to any U.S. request for help in investigating the cyber attack. JBS is a sprawling meat supplier with operations in the United States, Australia, Canada, Europe, Mexico, New Zealand, and Britain. The company said the vast majority of its beef, pork, poultry, and prepared foods plants would be operating at near full capacity on Thursday.
And NASA announced 2 new missions to Venus on Wednesday that will launch at the end of the decade and are aimed at learning how Earth's nearest planetary neighbor became a hellscape while our own thrived. These 2 sister missions both aim to understand how Venus became an inferno-like world capable of melting lead at the surface. That, according to Bill Nelson, the agency's newly confirmed administrator. The missions have been awarded about $500 million under NASA's Discovery program, and each is expected to launch in the 2028 to 2030 time frame. Both missions were picked from a competitive peer-reviewed process based on their scientific value and feasibility of their plans. Da Vinci Plus, which stands for Deep Atmosphere Venus Investigation of Noble Gases, Chemistry and Imaging, will gather more detail on the composition of Venus, primarily carbon dioxide atmosphere, to learn how it formed and evolved. The mission also seeks to determine whether the planet once had an ocean. And the news continues here on Eagle News. CJ and I will be back right after this break.
Totoo ang kasabihang may pera sa basura. Lalo na kung magagawa ang iba't ibang bagay mula sa mga recyclable material na inaakala ng iba na itatapon na. May ilang barangay sa bansa ang nagre-recycle ng basura at makikita ang iba't ibang bagay na gawa sa basura. Dekorasyon sa bahay. Sa mga proyektong ito, nagiging malinis ang kapaligiran bukod sa mayroon pang pagkakakitaan.
Welcome back to the news. California firefighters are preparing for a very busy fire season, says Captain John Gaddy of the Butte County Fire Department, as 10 of his men cut and remove brush in a forest near Oroville to decrease the risk of wildfires after massive blazes torched the area in 2018 and 2020. Take a look.
We're preparing for an upcoming very busy fire season. And this project's been going on for the last couple years, so we can't do this all over the state, but we find areas that are the biggest concern, and that's where we go and do the project work. So if a fire happens to come through this area, it's not going to burn as intense as a thick brush field. So they're reducing the fuels.
Right, this year is another exceptional year when it comes to the potential. We are in a fairly significant drought in portions of the state, and our fuel moistures in the vegetation, the moisture that is in the vegetation is extremely low for this time of year, which means our potential for a long duration fire season is there. All we need is the ignition now, and then we have a problem. There is no break, and there is no reset and regroup for the next summer. We're on a perpetual cycle of suppressing wildfires in California.
The dryness of the fuel is unnerving for everybody. I mean, it's right now, you know, we're in May, but it's like August, September fire. It's a tinderbox. So yeah, we're real concerned about that. But if we do nothing for the next 10 years, we're going to be right back where we were. And I'm not talking just town-wide. I mean, we need the state and the federal government to properly manage their land and give us protection.
The western U.S. state is bracing for the worst as yet another drought reported. Already 5 times more vegetation has burned here compared to the same time last year. While fires are part of the natural cycle of California, the fires and underwater each year. Climate change is considered a key driver of this trend. State fire officials note in with the fire season lengthened by an estimated 25 days.
Indonesia's remote Maluku Islands today, according to the USGS, or United States Geological Survey, but no tsunami warning was issued. The strong quake hit at a relatively shallow depth of 31 kilometers, about 127 kilometers southwest of the city of Ternate. Shallower quakes tend to cause more damage, but there were no immediate reports of casualties. Authorities issued warnings about potential aftershocks. Indonesia experiences frequent quakes due to its position on the Pacific Ring of Fire, an arc of intense seismic activity where tectonic plates collide that stretches from Japan through Southeast Asia and across the Pacific Basin.
In other environment news, images of Iceland's volcano erupting and a partial crater rim collapsing into the lava front. And according to the volcano discovery website, the eruption continues without significant changes. Although overall its intensity seemed to have been decreasing during the past week. The eruption, which began on March 19, is the first on the peninsula in more than 8 centuries, and it has been nearly 6,000 years since the last activity at the precise site. Since the original eruption in the Unax Valley, several new vents opened up. Volcanologists have predicted that the activity will continue for several months, if not decades.
And here's the latest in showbiz news from Julianne DeSena from our EBC Las Vegas Bureau.
Summer is upon us and almost starting to feel like pre-COVID-19 normal as more and more production houses finalize launch dates for their blockbusters and even produce featurettes to entice you to head back to the theaters.
Fast and Furious 9 hits theaters on June 26th, but in preparation, Universal Studios is building momentum with multiple trailers and even a featurette with none other than Vin Diesel himself, inviting viewers to come back to theaters to laugh, cheer, and believe again in ways that only the best movies can inspire.
We'll see you soon.
Warner Brothers releases its musical In the Heights on June 10th. From the creators of Hamilton and Crazy Rich Asians, you'll delve into a community where the streets are made of music and little dreams become big. HBO Max subscribers can stream the movie for free, but something tells me most of us will prefer to see it on the big screen. Lionsgate releases Voyagers on June 8th. It's a futuristic tale geared around preserving the human race by breeding and raising young men and women as they travel deep into space in search of a new home.
We're normal kids.
If we are ever to send a human mission into the depths of space, this is something we're going to have to consider, raising entire generations of people on a spaceship. So I thought it's quite a cool thought experiment.
I think that's what's really interesting about this film is that what it's really exploring is, what are our true natures as human beings? Are we innately bad or good people? Especially when people have been raised exactly in the same way in exactly the same environment. Can we be inherently bad or inherently good? And I think that that's the real fight and struggle of this movie is kind of fighting against our own natures and figuring out, what those even really are.
This week, Spirit Untamed launches in theaters across the country. Produced by DreamWorks Animation, it's an epic adventure about a headstrong girl who, while trying to find herself, discovers a kindred spirit in an unexpected connection with a wild horse. Now, that might sound a little weird to many of us who have only ever owned dogs, cats, or even hamsters, but here's what the cast has to say about the love of horses.
You hungry, bud?
Is that a potato?
Would that be bad?
Horses are finicky. They've got a real sweet tooth.
Thanks. That is better than a potato.
I'm a humongous equestrian and I love horses.
I've been riding a horse since I was 6 years old.
They're just so beautiful.
Horses can feel what you feel. So, shoulders back, eyes where you want him to go.
For anyone who rides horses, they know it is a connection, it is a respect.
Just trust him.
They'll easily sense when it's not an equal relationship. So it's this beautiful balance.
Horses have a personality, and whenever you establish a relationship, there is a deep form of communication without words.
Lucky had that connection with Spirit.
They're able to both find their way back home because of the bond that they created.
Elaine is an authentic horsewoman. She has grown up with horses. She brought to the movie the love of horses and the knowledge of that special relationship.
The horses are majestic and they're elegant.
They're very soulful and they become very attached to the people that take care of them.
Animals have such a close place at our hearts. It's something that everyone can connect with.
We'll get your family back, Spirit.
Spirit Untamed can only be watched in theaters starting this Friday. It's filled with great music and great messages around hope, self-discovery, and being a good friend, daughter, and member of your village. My only fear is that after watching it, we will all want our very own horse. In Las Vegas, Julianne Docena, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Julianne. Yes.
She's right about that. I now want a horse for myself. My favorite animals of all time. Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us again live here at the Filipino Arena. I am CJ Hero. Please join us again tomorrow.
Well, enjoy yourself there at the Filipino Arena. I wish I was with you. But at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles and we live in interesting times.